Hello everyone and welcome to another tutorial. Today I'll be showing you how to import Minecraft worlds directly into Blender. Well, Minecraft shaders can't really beat advanced rendering techniques, so first things first, you would have a Minecraft world prepared. I don't, so I'm just going to create one. Alright, so here's a world. Now things to note, only blocks will be exported, so entities and block entities like chests and item frames will not work. So when exporting Minecraft worlds, you'll only be able to export the loaded chunks. So if you want to export a massive region, you just gotta fly around. Alright, so I've built this tiny little dock. Don't judge my building skills. So I've placed a few items here that it might not import, like this boat or this chest. This is pretty much it, so let's export it. So I'm just gonna save. Easy as that. Now all you have to do is go to this website. I'll link to in the description. Over here it's a program called JMC to OBJ. So all you have to do is go to this page and press download.jar. Once downloaded, you can actually just open it up. So I've got it right here. And because it's a .jar file, you would also have to download Java. Just open it up. And here it is. It's going to be completely blank because we have to open up the world. Now there will be a list of other worlds, but this is all in your .minecraft folder, which you can just select. But I'm using multi-MC, so I have to link to a different folder. Here it is, cheese. So I think if I open this up, take the level.dat of the world folder, and then just drag it in. No? Okay, then I'll just copy the trajectory. There. Press load. Ah, there we go. Oh, that's not good. Oh well. You can use another program called Mineways. It does the same thing, but I just like to use this program. Looks cooler. Alright, so right click to move around. It's just generating all the chunks, but we'll only really need to select a specific region. So with left click, we just drag, let's say, this area. With your region selected, you'll also be able to choose how deep you want the building to be and how high. Because, I mean, this is just a 2D map, so we also have to specify top and bottom. So I'll just leave the settings as it is, and then just delete the bottom later on. Now with our region selected, all we have to do is go to export. Now here we can do export textures, make sure that's selected. And not much else needs to be changed, so we can just press export. Obviously, we've got to choose a file location. So I just created a folder on the desktop called cheese. Call the model file cheese and export. Now this is going to take a while, depending on how powerful your PC is. I think it's done. Ah, there we go. In the console log, it says it's done. So once we're done, we can just close out of everything because we simply now, in this folder, we've got an object file. So if we open this up, so that's the whole world and all of the spaghetti. So over here, you can see we've got our dock. The chest is there, but not the boat. And a chunk of this mountain. So really, I just want the scene at the top. So I'm just gonna cut out all of this spaghetti looking stuff. But right now, we've got to put this into Blender. So all I have to do is just open up Blender now. Right, so first of all, delete everything. Now I'm not going to go through all the keybinds because most of what you can do, you can just do with these little toolbars. But just as a quick overview, you can use the middle mouse to move around, shift middle mouse to pan like this, A to select everything, and then X to delete, which just comes up with a little prompt. But with all that said, now we can just go to the top left, go to File, Import, OBJ, Wavefront OBJ, there we go. Go to your file trajectory and choose your OBJ file. Now this can take a while, or it can be instant. So I'm just going to press numpad 7 to go to the top view and then just move this to the center of the world because it's annoying for it to be over there. Maybe move this down, using G to move things around, and then pressing X, Y, or Z to constrain it to an axis. Z's up and down in this program. Now, as I said, a lot of unnecessary geometry to calculate down here. So I'm going to press Tab. It's going to take a while. Press 3 to select all the faces. Okay, it doesn't import my boat, but it imports a squid and its friend. Anyways, now we're going to hold in Z. I've got more options than you should have, but you should have wireframe or X-ray, but I think you can choose wireframe. So now everything is going to be like this. I don't know how to describe this. This is just messy. But anyways, I'm going to press numpad 1 so I can see the entire build from the side. And then while still in edit mode and in the face select system, it's not a system. You just click up here. This, that, or that. So we choose this one. And while in X-ray mode, we just select all of this. And because it's X-ray, it will select the faces behind other faces, so it selects everything. X faces. There you go. Now it's just less to work with. Now I can just go back into the solid view. I'm just going to save this project, so we can go to File, Save, Save As. I'm going to call this Cheese as well. Save As, there we go. Now I can just do Control S to save it. And just because we'll be working entirely in Blender now, we can just go to Window and Full Screen. Now we finally have the scene here, so now we can set it up for rendering. So if we go to this camera icon, we can change the rendering engine from Eevee to Cycles. So Eevee is like a video game graphics engine. You know how games generally look. And Cycles focuses on realism, so it takes a long time to calculate, but it looks good. And obviously change CPU to GPU if you have one. If you have the GPU option grayed out, you either don't have a GPU, or go to the preferences under the edit tab, go to system. You've got to choose CUDA, so I can select my GPU. So it might be on none. So we choose CUDA, and then just select your graphics card. You can also select your CPU, but don't. Then we could just go down here and press Save Preferences, and that's that. So before we go to the rendered view, we just want to change some settings like max samples. I'll set to 64. The render samples we can set to maybe 256 and untick this denoise option. I'll focus on that problem later. Save the project, and now if I hold in Z, go to the rendered mode, you can see it rendering, and as you know, you can tell why this takes so long. It looks good, but it's noisy. It's a very nice scene, but obviously there isn't much to look at because there's no light. So if I do Shift A to add an object, go to light and add in a sun, I can just move the light icon up here. You can see now we have a sun, but you'd be asking where all the shadows are. Well, they're there, but you just have to change the angle of the light. So if we click drag this, like that, you can see we've got nice shadows. And the light intensity looks boring and flat, so we can go to the light option and change it from 1 to 5, so the light is just brighter. It looks all good, but the materials for this world is not really set up well, because if you go to the textures, you can see it's all blurry. Because Minecraft is just a bunch of pixels, and for programs that expect higher resolutions, it doesn't know what to do with this. So what we have to do is just drag this panel up, and instead of a timeline view, because this is not an animation, we just want it to be the shader editor right here. So we're going to select the world. As you can see, we already have some nodes going on over here. So if you go to the material tab over here, you can see all of the current materials that are going to be used to create this world. But it's easier to select a material by simply going into the edit mode and then finding something like this gravel over here and then just selecting that face. Then we can see the material for that face has been selected. So here's the texture for the gravel. If you want to know where all the textures are, we can just go back to that cheese folder. Here it is. And in the textures, and then in Minecraft, and then in Block, you can see all the textures. These aren't all the textures in the game. These are just the textures that are used in the world. So like this large amethyst bud texture, that just means there's a geode somewhere, but I think I deleted that. But anyway, so you can switch these out for a texture pack. So with the face selected and this gravel.png node, we see that it's set to linear. We want that to be closest because we want to see the pixels. And just like that, now we see the individual pixels. And then we just do the same for the grass. Select the top texture for the grass, closest, this grass, closest, and this other one for some reason, closest. Now this can take you a very long time depending on how many blocks are in the game or how many blocks are in the world. So instead we're going to use an add-on called MC Prep. Now it's very easy to install add-ons. Yeah, once you download the zip file from their website, you can go to the top left from Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, press Install. It's a lot of steps, and then you can go to Downloads to find the zip file. But I've got this add-ons folder here in my bookmarks. Now here are all my add-ons. I just use them for different things, for different places. But here's the MC Prep add-on. So you can just press install add-on. Okay, I don't think it needs to freeze like that. So once you've installed it, it should already show it to you like this. And then you just have to enable it. It's quite easy really. So, oh right. When you install the add-on, you do save preferences as well. Why is it frozen again? Anyways, so we can just go back to solid mode because the rendered mode is lagging a lot. So with the entire world selected, you can press N on your keyboard, or if you really want to, click that tiny little arrow, get to MC Prep. So we got two sections here. We got Mineways or JMC to OBJ. Now because I'm using JMC, I'll just select that option. And then I'll click Prep Materials. It's going to come up with a bunch of different options. And then we also have this Animate Textures. So we'll tick that because the water is an animated texture. So tick that and then we just press OK. So it will just do all of those texture things for us. So now if you go to the material preview, there we go. Just took a while to process. But anywho, here's water. If I press play or spacebar, all the animated textures will start working. Now it's a little buggy because Blender is not really a Minecraft engine. There are always ways to fix things, but this is just a material preview, so bugs can stay as bugs. So now, with all the materials prepared for us, we can go back to the rendered view, and the scene is looking good already, but the sky is grey. It is incredibly boring. So, we're going to go to the World Properties tab in Blender over here, and for the background, instead of choosing background, we're going to choose Environment Texture. Somewhere within this list. So not here, wait, it's got to be the color button here. There it is, Environment Texture. So now the world is pink. Yep. So now we can just go online and search for HDRI Haven. Let me select the first link. Now what an HDRI is essentially a 360-degree image. And for our world, obviously if we look around, it's in 3D, it's 360 degrees everywhere. So we can just download one of these free ones. See, this one looks pretty good, so I'll just select this. Now we can keep this as an EXR format. And the resolution also depends, so we'll leave it at 4K. I mean, that's high enough. Unless you really want it to be in 24K. So now we're going to just download this massive file. Once that is done, we can go to Blender and click the Open Image button. Go to Downloads, and where's that EXR file? Here it is. Then just press Open Image, and there we go. A 360-degree image has been loaded. Looks quite nice. So we'll just zoom back into the world here. It just makes this block game look a little more real. So now if you want to render it as it is, we can just do Shift A and add a camera. Now the camera is very tricky to get working sometimes, so I just like to rely on keybinds. So if I do Control, Alt, and numpad 0, it will teleport the camera to your position. Then if you hold in Shift and that tilde key, don't really know what it is, but anyways, then you'll be able to use WASD and Shift and I think E and Q to go up and down. I can position it like this. Hopefully that looks fine, but I can adjust the sun. Press R to rotate, like that. I can also make the color of the light a little more orange, but I can go to the Output tab over here and then choose Render Region. This just makes it only render what's really like in the camera. It's nicer because it's just more responsive this way. But I see the scene doesn't exactly look that impressive, so I'm just going to move the camera a little further back, and then with the camera selected I can go to the camera properties and then change the focal length. So the FOV we can make to quite crazy numbers. So already you can render this out, but I don't like the water in Minecraft because it just, I don't know, everybody changes it, like in shaders and I don't know, I'm going to change it to something nicer. So I'm going to select the world and then select this water material. And then all of these nodes in here, I'm just gonna either move aside. So if you're holding Control and right click, you've got a little knife tool to like cut all the wiring like that. So we can delete this with X. So we can keep this texture just in case if we want it back. But this big node we can delete. Then with Shift A and then click search, we can look for glossy because water is quite glossy. So we're gonna connect this to the material output for the surface and then make the roughness all the way to 0 or just like very small number. So it's like slightly rough, like this. Now, as you know, water isn't perfectly clear, so I'm going to make this a little more blue, somewhere like that. And water isn't exactly perfectly still, so what I'm going to do is search for a noise texture. I have to search for bump, add bump, normal to normal, and then the factor into the height. So now the water gets displaced a bit. Now for some technical reason I don't want to explain, we're just going to make the coordinates of this texture something else. So instead of this vector thing, we're going to search for mapping like that, plug that into here. Texture coordinate, I think. Yep, there we go. Make it an object, and then I'm going to add another object in the scene, empty, plain axes, and then back to the cheese object, make that object empty. You don't have to worry about what that does, but essentially, if I were to duplicate this and put it like right next to the rest of the water. It looks seamless because whenever I move this around, the texture stays perfectly still, but the object moves around. So if everything is constrained to the same coordinate, it looks seamless. It's pretty good. So I'm just delete that face, go back here. The world is selected. Yep. So obviously this is to Ripley, so I'm gonna put this a little lower like that. Now this still doesn't exactly look like water, so I'm gonna take the strength and bring that down too. So it just distorts the water enough so that it doesn't look bad. There we go. That looks like water. Now you don't have to use a glossy node. If I just disconnect this, I can use glass instead. This makes it more transparent, so you can actually see the world under here, but it can take longer to calculate, which is very annoying sometimes. So if I put the normal into the normal, just to add that distortion back, you know what, that actually looks pretty good. We don't need the glossy, we can use glass instead. We're just going to make this slightly blue as well. That almost looks purple. Hold on. There we go. A nice scene indeed. Just for some finer adjustments, I'm going to make the sun a little brighter, maybe 10. Can't really tell what's too bright. Oh, I want to first get rid of these squids. They are very strange. I select the face and press linked. What? No. Control L, I think. Yeah. Then it will select all the faces that are connected. And then I can do X to delete faces. But it appears some of the squid still exists. So I'm going to shift click all of these. Control L. Then delete faces. There we go. Okay, that squid doesn't matter. The scene is... It's done. It's completely done. So now all I have to do is render it out. But I like to add some compositing effects. So what I'm going to do is go to compositing and use nodes. Now just before we render, I'm going to go back to the scene, this camera thing right here. Scroll down to performance. Change the tiling from 2048 to just 256. Because the tiling size is simply just the size of the blocks that you see when they get rendered out. So right here in the rendering tab or just wherever else, we just go to render on the top left and do render image. So now using your graphics card, it's going to render out individual tiles of the scene. Now this can take a very long time depending on how complex your scene is or how powerful your PC is. But this is very high quality water, so I expect it to take this long. But if it's not performant enough, then you can always use the glossy node instead. Or what could also make it go faster is if you go to light paths, and then tick fast GI approximation. The lighting won't look as realistic, or at least to me, but it does make everything much faster. But this is pretty normal speed. And there we go. The scene is done. Now for me, at least, I don't like noise. Now 256 samples is good enough, but it's still quite noisy, especially here in the water. So we got two options, either create sample count to a gigantic, ridiculous number, or we can just use compositing to denoise it, because we've rendered this with compositing. So you can see in compositing, I forgot a step. Oh, yes, of course, I remember. If I go to the compositing tabs, like this area, you got denoising data. I forgot to tick that. So now we're going to have to re-render this because it doesn't have denoising data. So cue the time lapse. Ta-da! It is done. Now if you go to the compositing tab, we have denoising information. So now all I have to do is see what it looks like. So I'm going to move this thing over here, press Shift A to add another node, type in denoise, there it is, delete that. Then I put the denoise thing image to image, this image to this image, and then denoising normal to normal and denoising albedo to albedo. So now if I go to the rendering tab, it's not compositing. Wait, press N on the side and go to options. You've got these extra options. So auto render and OpenCL. So auto render allows you to like modify something in the scene and it will composite live. So let's see. So if I add in something like a glare node and go here, is there anything glaring? I cannot tell. Oh, of course, because I didn't render with auto render enabled, I'm gonna have to re-render the entire image again. Lovely. Okay, but except this time I just want to keep playing around with the scene then. So first of all, I want to add a boat because obviously the boat entity from earlier didn't work. So I'm going to do shift and right click right here. There we go. So this little circle thing is where all the objects spawn. So if I add in a cube, you can see it spawns over there. If I add in a monkey, it spawns in over there. I'll just delete those. If I press N to CMC prep, we've got a spawner section over here. So I'm going to spawn an entity. Bring the drop down here. But we have to press reload assets. And there's a boat right there. Or you can bring down this drop down and search for a boat. There we go. Then we just do spawn boat. Now with MC Prep, they come with rigs. So if you do control tab instead of normal tab like edit mode, this it's a rig. I don't know, but it's also good for posing. Do this, rotate. You can use all these options here, like this one, which just has all of the rotations and scales in the single gimbal. So if you do this, we can move this like that, rotate it like that, rotate. Now we can go back to object mode, and don't forget to save your file. And another nice trick I'd like to use is depth of field. So if I select the camera, add another empty, see it spawned an empty where this spawning thingy was. So I'm going to put the empty like right over here. Then we can tell the camera to focus to where the empty is. So I can actually just rename this, if I double click that, to focus empty or focus point. It's going to be focusing to that point. Then I select the camera and then press numpad 0 to go back to where the camera was without moving it. Then press the camera option. Ah, there it is, depth of field, right there. Enable. You can see everything gets very blurry, but now if I search for focus point, or really once there's like hundreds of objects in the scene, really you could just use this eyedropper tool and then select it like that. Focus point. There we go. So now the camera focuses to wherever the focus point is. So if I go to material preview, here we'll be able to see the depth of field. I think it works. Oh well, let's see. If we take the camera and make the f-stop really low. Ah, there we go. It's working now. You can leave it at a 0.1. It's the lowest option you can go, but it already looks like a tiny scene. So you can see it will always focus at the empty, no matter where the camera is. Oh, and if you're doing an operation, like moving the camera around, you can always snap back to the previous location by doing right click. I'm just going to save the project. Oh, it almost crashed there. Now if I go back to rendered, see now the scene is incredibly blurry, but that's just depth of field. It's fancy. Maybe I could make it a 0.3 instead. Nah, 0.1 looked fun. And now finally, let's check if everything's set up. In the compositing tab, use nodes is enabled, OpenCL is here, auto renders here, compositing, the denoising data is there, edit performance, it's at 256. I mean, graphics cards can output quite a large tiling number, so we can actually just increase it to 512, and that should be it. Maybe if I just take this bottom panel and replace it with image editor. Under images, we just search for render result. There we go. And now, if I press F12 to render, should render this out. And no, you don't get a time lapse for this. Sometimes too many time lapses can lead to too much dopamine, and that's a problem. I'm just making stuff up. And there we go. Although the scene is still incredibly noisy. So, now, finally, we can go to a denoise node, put it in between here, and there we go. You can see something's happening. It's compositing. Although a denoise node takes a very long time for me because it runs on my CPU. My CPU is not that great. So instead of testing if this is working, we can just delete it. Should be cancelling that. And there we go. You can see the image is completely black because there's nothing to connect it to. So if I reconnect it, it's there. I can replace this with a color, I think. Yep, pink. So I want to first add a glare node, put it in between there. So what this does is it takes all the bright parts and makes them glow. But you have to specify it. So we choose fog glow as the option, make it high quality, and you can see that it's glowing a little bit. Even the bright parts here are glowing, because if I press M to mute, you can see it's glowing, not glowing, glowing, not glowing. It just makes it look nicer. And now I can add a denoise node in between here. Make sure it's accurate because I like accuracy. Then we're going to fill in denoising normal to denoising normal, denoising albedo to denoising albedo. And just before it calculates, here is the noise as a before, and here's the noise afterwards. Look at that. So now all the noise is gone. And that is that. The image is done. Now this is something I should have explained earlier, but in the output tab, you can select the resolution over here. But 1080p is fine. So there we go, the image is done. Now, what do we do with it? Well, after saving the Blender project, obviously, we go to the top left, go to Image, Save As, and put it on a desktop and call it Cheese. We can specify what file format it is, but we'll make it a PNG, 16-bit, no compression. It's going to be a very large file format. If you want to upload it online like Discord, you want the compression to be maxed out at 8-bit color depth, which I might as well just do. Then save as image. Just give it a second to save because it's compressing it. It's not going to lower the quality because it's a PNG. And there we go. It's done. There it is. Cheese.png. Nice. So that is pretty much the entire tutorial. It doesn't really dive into any specifics, but it does show you the basics of how to get a Minecraft world into Blender and make up a basic scene. All the links for all the different programs I use are in the description. And if you want to look into learning more about Blender and all of its amazing features, you can look up other tutorials where they'll be more professional. And that way you can keep blending with Blender. Right, that's the end of the tutorial, and goodbye.